Here we are reading with Sister Donna from Sisters of Mercy. She has belonged to this order for 51 years.
How do you join if you discover you have a vocation?
Well, first I think you would want to visit with a sister, and you probably would know one or two sisters. Then you might visit their mother house. My mother house is in Omaha, and I took a little trip to Omaha with my parents. They were not happy with this trip. Then I wrote a letter to the vocation director, and then she would come and interview me, and then we go through a whole process of, like, for a whole year we live in a place with other sisters and just see how that feels. So by the end of the year, then we can make our final decision.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the process of my education if I join?
We would want you to have some college. Okay. Who's taking good notes here? We would definitely finish your education to make sure you have a bachelor's degree. And you also have a full year where you don't go to school, but you learn how to pray and you learn how to do good works. So we would do works of mercy and have lots of time to pray and reflect. And then we might go out and do a little work, but eventually you would have a master's degree. We think that's important.
Okay. Who can join?
Okay, we have lots of different, I think one of your questions was, do you have levels or different categories? There are the sisters, and these are women who take a promise or a vow to be poor, simple, to obey the superior or the order, and to not get married. Okay? So there are the sisters. Then we have men and women, and we call them associates. And they study our charism, and we'll talk about that too. And they wouldn't live with us, but they would get together with us and pray with us and do works with us. Okay, so there's associates. Then we have people who work in our institutions, like we have a lot of hospitals, so like the president of the hospital would be called a partner in mercy. And they get together and learn about the charism of mercy. So we have lots of different ways so people are connected.
And then the next answer you had, or the next question you answered, but are there various levels with your?
No, we're kind of all the same. I know some orders have lay sisters, and it used to be that they would do the housework. We don't do that. We're all the same.
And then the last question is, are there men and women in your order?
There are men and women. There are, to take the vows, because the Pope says you have to be a woman to take vows in our order. But we have, like, our lay associates. We have many husbands and wives. We have some men that aren't even married, but they like to pray with the spirit of mercy. So they're connected with us. And we have lots of women and men that work in our organizations.
So is your order like mostly just nuns, or is there like priests in your order?
We don't have priests.
Okay.
No. It's mostly sisters.
What is your charism?
It is, we use the word charism, and it's a spirit of mercy, which is a little different than charity. And charity does good deeds for people. Okay. Mercy, we believe, doing good deeds, we have to listen to the poor, and they change us. That we have to have a merciful heart, so we don't just give out food and then go away, but we really try to spend time and learn from the poor. Okay. Mercy also means that we ask questions like, why is this person poor? Because I want to understand the whole situation. Not only is she hungry, but there's a reason that she's hungry. And I want to know why she's hungry. Well, her parents threw her out of the house, or so sometimes that's the hard part, is to ask those questions.
Okay, and what is your motto?
My motto is, what is my motto? I have it inside my ring. We carve our mottos right inside my ring. With the Spirit for her people.
The next question is, have there been any other well-known members of your congregation?
Well, I think every woman is well known. We're kind of a universal order. This is a little book of where in the world are my sisters, and it talks about all over the world where our sisters are working. And we have a sister in Sudanese, working with the Sudanese in Sudan. There's an article in the newspaper this morning about how hard things are there. In my mind, she's famous. We have people working in Latin America. I think they're famous. Many of our sisters write books and they become famous.
And then, could you tell us your founder?
Okay. I told you a little bit about Catherine McCauley, but we'll do that again. Catherine McCauley was an Irish girl in Dublin, and her mom and her dad died, so she went to live with a very wealthy, I think it was her cousin, and she kind of took care of the house. And while she lived there, she got very involved with the social life of Dublin. She would go to parties and lunches, and on her way, she would notice women on the streets that were homeless. They either had run away from home or they had been abused. And her heart was so moved with that she decided she wanted to do something to help that situation. Then the uncle died and left her a couple of $1 million. Now in those days, that was a lot of money. So we were just talking before you came about what would we each do with $1 million. And they're so rational. You both said, well, I'd want to figure everything out first before I spend a lot of money. But they both said, I'd want to get a house. So Catherine McCauley decided she wanted to get a house to shelter these women on the streets. So instead of buying a house in a very poor neighborhood, she went to the wealthiest area of Dublin and built this house of mercy. And it made the neighbors very nervous because she was bringing all these women home and these children that were orphans to live there. But eventually, she had the other women living in the neighborhood to come and help her. And eventually, as she got older, the bishop asked, what's going to happen if you die to this house? And she said, I think it'll be just fine. He said, no, you better become a regular nun. So she had to put on a habit, but before then she never wore a habit. So that's how the order got started. Okay.
Okay, we kind of already went over this, but what are some facts about your founder?
She was, I wish I had a picture. I have lots of little things to show you. She was very generous. Well, she was wealthy and kind of gave it all to this house. And she wanted women to come and help her do works of mercy. We're one of the only orders that take a fourth vow. Most nuns have to take 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. She said, no, everyone will take a vow to serve the poor and the sick and the ignorant. So she was very clear about that. And we hear that she loved to dance and sing. Maybe she did Irish step dancing. She loved to sing. At night they would get the women together and sing and have fun. I will give you each a little booklet of the early sisters and how they would go out and find people and bring them home. So, and this was drawn during her lifetime. One of the sisters followed her and did these little sketches of her. In those days, Catholics were not well thought of, and they weren't allowed to go to regular schools. So she started, I think they're called bush schools, where she would go out and meet the kids under the bushes and try to teach them. And the Catholics were very poorly treated in the hospitals, so she would go into the hospitals and try to take better care of them. We're all over the world. This shows, as I said, many of the different countries where the sisters work. Samoa, South Africa, China, Panama.
Okay. Next question is, are there any interesting facts that you think you would like
Share.
to share?
Oh, about the order?
About the
order
order or
Uh-huh.
yourself, or
Okay.
like anything.
Sisters of Mercy always go into an area and try to see who's being left out, who's being disregarded. Right now, I work with poor women who live on the streets and they've been abused, and so I try to help. I have friends that are working with me, and we try to help them get into housing, and a lot of them are on drugs, so we try to help them get off drugs. And, so in many cities, if you hear that there are Sisters of Mercy, they're usually doing something to help not only the financially poor, but that are people that are really excluded. It's kind of interesting. And it's also interesting that we do work with our partners, men and women that work with us, and we consider them equal.
Okay, Ella, do you have any questions?
No.
One of my questions is, why did you think becoming a nun was so important?
It's kind of a mystery. I think when I was in 5th grade, I thought about, I wanted to do something that would please God. And it was just always there. That feeling was always there. And I also wanted to do something that would really help people in the world. Really. And I thought I needed to be disciplined. I think I was afraid that I would just blend into normal life and kind of lose my values. That wouldn't have had to happen, but I think I was afraid of that. So it was wanting to be part of a group that thought of God a lot and that listened to where people were hurting and helped them.
Okay, how did you realize that you had a vocation?
I think because that thought kept being with me. And when I moved to Omaha, there was a lot of time to pray and decide, is this really good? Should I go home? Should I not stick with it?
What was the hardest
for me, it was leaving my family, my parents. I was an only child, and I know they were not happy at all that I was doing this. So I think I felt badly about leaving them. That was hard. And my friends from high school.
And then, do you regret anything about becoming a nun?
No, not really. I mean, we all have days where, the car breaks down, the dishes aren't getting washed. I'm trying to do something for people that are poor and we run out of money and we can't do it anymore, so there are days like that, but no, I've never regretted.
Okay, and did you have any last thoughts of maybe I shouldn't do this when your parents weren't very happy about you?
A lot. Then I felt guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't be leaving my parents alone.